This is Mike Love of the Beach Boys. I want to personally invite you to come to the Pablo Center on May 18th.
The Beach Boys are coming to the Pablo Center in Eau Claire on Sunday, May 18th for 2 shows. The 3 p.m. show is sold out, but there are still a few tickets available for the 7 p.m. show, so act fast. The concert features nearly 2 hours of Beach Boys hits, so I'm here sitting with, virtually, Mike Love, the singer of the Beach Boys. Thanks, Mike.
Well, it's glad to be on your Zoom.
Yeah.
And we can discuss the issues and the candidates.
Yeah. Yeah, it's only been a few interviews I've ever done virtually, so hopefully I'll be able to catch you for even like 5 minutes when you're in Eau Claire. But like I said, the show, I guess, is almost 2 hours long and you're doing it twice. I don't know how your voice is going to be able to hold up through all that. How do you take care of it?
Actually, the more shows we do in a row, the stronger your voice gets. It's kind of like musculature. If you don't exercise, they atrophy. But if you do exercise, you get stronger and, add a little more weight and stuff.
Sure.
Which I'm not in favor of. I like to do everything in moderation, especially exercise.
Yeah, at least at this point, right? I've talked to quite a few singers that have ran into vocal cord issues and stuff over the years. Have you ever had an injury to a vocal cord or anything where it took you out of the game?
No, really not.
Wow.
I never smoked, and I don't drink excessively. I'll drink my Club Kokomo spirits, our rum-based drink primarily.
Sure.
But, I don't drink to excess, nor do I smoke. I don't do anything to harm the voice. And we do vocal warm-ups when we're backstage before the shows. Since we're doing an afternoon show, which, as you pointed out, is sold out in Eau Claire, we'll probably do our warm-up before that show, and we'll be plenty warmed up after our 2 hours of music. And what we like to do is we like to start with an hour of, I like to start retro. I like to start with the surfing songs, and then Surfer Girl, and then we'd like to end up the first half with our car songs. I Get Around being the most famous of the car songs.
Sure.
So we have a lot of fun doing what we do. And so we take a 20-minute intermission.
Okay.
And then we go on for the second half of the show, which is real close to 2 hours also.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's perfect because people aren't going to hold their bladders for 2 hours, but they don't want to miss any songs. So I'm sure over the years, you perform these songs literally thousands of times. I'm sure your favorites kind of go in and out based on the season or whatever. What lately has been your favorite song to perform live?
Well, we have a lot of favorites. It depends on what your mood is. If you're in a somber mood, In My Room or The Warmth of the Sun or Don't Worry Baby, they come to mind. But then if you're in an up-tempo mood, Fun, I Get Around, Surfing USA, so many great songs. And then we have our Pet Sounds album stuff. God Only Knows, Sloop John B. and Wouldn't It Be Nice? We always love doing those. So we have a big variety of types of songs and tempos of songs. But Kokomo is probably the biggest sing-along of our show. It was featured on not only the soundtrack for the Cocktail movie, the Tom Cruise movie, but our friend John Stamos had us on Full House. And, millions of people since Kokomo became a hit in 1988, millions of people have seen us on that episode, the rerun of Full House, And so that's a very popular one. But Good Vibrations is probably the most unique and avant-garde. It's still avant-garde, and it was done in 1966.
And you've written a lot of the songs, not all of them, but quite a few of them. What are your favorite ones that you wrote?
Well, California Girls, I Get Around, Help Me Rhonda, Fun. Good Vibrations, I wrote every syllable of that one. California Girls, did I mention that one? Yeah. Anyway, I wrote a whole bunch of them with my cousin Brian.
Yeah.
I was the lyricist and conceptual guy to his incredibly gifted musical abilities. He would sit at the piano and come up with these fantastic chord progressions and harmonies, and then we'd work on the harmonies together. But he would be at a loss for words, literally, and I would supply the what is basically poetry. Like, for instance, "Good Vibrations" was a poem. It came out of 1966 when the Vietnam War was going on, and student demonstrations were going on, and there's civil rights issues going on. But I wanted to talk about something much more positive. I wanted to talk about a girl all into peace and love and flower power and nature, and which I did. I wrote this poem on the way to the studio and handed it off to Brian, who liked it, and he gave it to Carl, who sang the lead on the verses. But even out of the negativity of the times, I always tried to look for the positive in things, and it turns out the "Good Vibrations" was the #1 song for making people feel good. "Good Vibrations" was the #1 song, according to a psychologist in Sheffield, England, a couple of years ago, he wanted to find out what songs made people feel the best, and "Good Vibrations" came in at #1, which is an awesome thing.
Yeah, what a crazy accomplishment that I'm sure you don't even think about when you're writing the song, that somebody decades later is going to scientifically prove that it's like the most positive song in the world. Of all the lyrics, because you've written lyrics to obviously dozens and dozens of songs, sometimes song lyrics are more personal than others. Is there any specific lyric or any couple lines from any song that are more personal to you than all the rest?
We've all had crushes on people, or had maybe been in love with people, and they didn't feel the same way. And that was the premise of the lyrics for "The Warmth of the Sun," which in November of 1963, my cousin Brian and he just recently moved out of his home in Hawthorne, and we got together and wrote that song. It was in the wee hours of the morning when we finished writing it. The same date that President Kennedy was taken to the hospital.
Wow.
So in Dallas. And then, so we recorded that song on January 1st, 1964. But that was a case of you were either in love or had a crush on somebody, and they didn't feel the same way. So it was never going to happen. However, at one point during your life, you felt that euphoria of being in love. And that was the whole idea of "The Warmth of the Sun." Rather than agonizing over the fact that it was never going to be, you appreciated the fact that at least you had that feeling at some one point in your life. Maybe more, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. You mentioned the Kokomo song, which I went to Florida for 1 month, one winter, and went to Key Largo, kind of partially because of the song, where I'm like, oh, I've heard Key Largo. That must be incredible. Kokomo obviously isn't a real place, but traveling the world over and over and over again, you've clearly been everywhere. What place in the world is most similar to what Kokomo would be?
Well, I think Hawaii has a lot of similarities, and a lot of places in the Caribbean do.
Yeah.
Like, we're very fond of being in St. Bart's, which is St. Bartholomew. I think that was the name of Columbus's brother or something like that.
Sure.
I don't know if he's sainted or anything, but
do you have a favorite beach in Hawaii, or in general anywhere in the world, that sticks out as your favorite one?
Well, the North Shore of Hawaii is absolutely beautiful. That's amazing. But also, you talk about beaches, Bora Bora in the French Polynesia, near Tahiti. Well,
Wow.
That's one beautiful place. There's some amazing beaches, amazing islands around the world, and they all have their different characters, or characteristics, I should say. There's beautiful beaches on the east and west coast of Florida. California's got their beautiful spots. South Africa, Australia, they're surfing nations. And, it's fantastic that our music has reached around the world. And we've literally had hit records in those places I just mentioned, along with hit records in Israel, all over Europe. We've had fan letters from Russia, fan letters from China, and a guy from Iran told me that they played our music when they were on vacation in the summer in Iran. That's pretty darn nice.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you guys have like accomplished basically everything that's possible to accomplish as music artists. You got the Lifetime Achievement Grammy Award. You've sold literally hundreds of millions of albums, and more recently now you're being inducted into the Songwriter Hall of Fame. Right? That's coming up this June. Of all of the awards and accomplishments that you've reached, which one sticks out to you that you're the most proud of?
I think Songwriters Hall of Fame is really up there. Being recognized with the Grammys, the Lifetime Achievement, the American Music Awards, they're all good. But I think probably the greatest achievement is seeing the audience response and people singing along with us towards the end of our show. We're doing Good Vibrations, Kokomo, Barbara Ann, and Fun, Fun, Fun. People are euphoric and having the greatest time. And not just our original fans, but their kids and their grandchildren. So that is the greatest accolade of all, I think.
Wow. Yeah. One, we're excited to be able to see you. So you did write the lyrics for a lot of songs. You mentioned that your cousin Brian wrote a lot of the music as well, but you were kind of the front man performing for all these, 60 years or whatever you guys have been performing at this time. How big of an impact has live performance been on the career of the Beach Boys as a whole?
Well, for me, there are two groups. The Beach Boys became two groups. So the recording group and the live group. The recording group was headed up by Brian Olson. When he left, he no longer wanted to tour. In late 1964, he retired from touring and put his full attention on production and, recording with some of the greatest musicians in the West Coast to do the tracks for our songs. And it was sad to see him leave the road, but he wasn't happy on the road. He really wanted to get into that studio, which he did. And so the following year, in 1965, he did California Girls. And while he was in the studio with the musicians, I was in the hallway writing out the lyrics that I came up with for that song. Sure. And then the following year, we did, towards the end of 65, we did Beach Boys Party album. Off of that album, Barbara Ann became a big hit for us. But then in the middle of 66, the Pet Sounds album came out. And then Good Vibrations came out in the fall of 66. So that was a fantastic year for us. In fact, on the strength of Good Vibrations in Great Britain, we were voted the number one group in England, number two being the Beatles. And that was an amazing achievement at the height of the Beatles' popularity.
I saw that in the documentary, because you guys have a documentary that came out last year that you can stream on Disney Plus, which I thought was pretty cool. I've heard your music since I was like a little kid, obviously, but I didn't know all that crazy much in depth about your lives and about the band until I knew I was going to be able to meet you like this. So I watched that just this last week, and it was a pretty cool little watch.
It really focused on the origins of the group and the family connection and all that stuff. But it didn't cover much of the fact that there have been several thousands of live concerts with the live group, who was headed up by my cousin Carl musically. And then I would be involved with the agents and the management and the promotion, deciding where we're going to go and with, and so it's a whole different aspect of the music business, that live music. But I always like the spontaneity and the appreciation of the live audience for your music. That, to me, that's fantastic, to be able to see that there are actually thousands of people that really want to hear your records and enjoy themselves in the process. So we are focused with our live group on recreating those songs as close as humanly possible to the recorded music, with maybe a little extra, salsa on the, into Good Vibrations because it is live. And so it's a lot of fun doing these songs, and it's so uplifting to see the joy that our music brings and creates with people. It's a blessing, actually.
Yeah, live music is a whole different experience than anything else in the world. And I think in current music, so much of it relies on technology that people don't sound live the same way that they do on album, like they used to. In all your time performing, I think kind of anything you do, you learn over time, different ways to get better at it. What have you learned that has improved your live performance over the years?
Well, we learned to do vocal warm-ups before our shows, not just go in cold and start singing.
Yeah.
Because your voice is like musculature. You got to warm it up a little bit. And so we found that vocally, we're in better shape if we do our vocal warm-ups before our concert. But also, we have a law, a rule in our group, no drinking alcohol before going on stage. Because, if you maybe have some people can't maintain their, they don't have the ability to cut themselves off. So they'll have 2 drinks and then 3 drinks. They get sloppy at whatever they're doing. And our vocals are too tight. They're too structured. You gotta sing that note, not only the note, but harmonize as well. So it takes 100% attention to do a really good job. So we found that vocal warm-ups and not drinking before the show. I mean, we'll have maybe a bite to eat well before the show, because if we eat too close to the show, it'll become Burpin' USA.
That's hilarious. Yeah. One time when I was recording an interview, a guest made me not shotgun, but just chug a whole beer. And I was then burping on the radio. So it was a bit of a mistake. So you guys have had, naturally, when you have a career for 60 plus years, people have to kind of swap out over time. How much time does it take when you bring somebody in to get them to match on the harmonies and all of that? Because everyone's voice is different.
This is true, but there are great singers out there. Like, for instance, my cousin Carl passed away 27 years ago in February. And of course, that was a tremendous loss. He sang so beautifully in Good Vibrations and God Only Knows, and a song Darlin' that we do, that I wrote with my cousin Brian. And so it was a terrible loss, but we had lost Dennis Wilson in 1983. So mortality does impact everyone's groups. The Bee Gees, all the brothers are gone. And I watched the documentary on the Bee Gees, which was done by Frank Marshall, who did our documentary as well. And that was touching, that was very touching. It was done beautifully. But so apart from that, for instance, my son, Christian, he is an amazing singer. He sings God Only Knows so beautifully. It's eerily similar to Carl. I mean, it's just not the same, but it's similar timbre. He just has such a beautiful way of singing it. And so it's fantastic. That's God Only Knows, a very important, very well respected, very well loved song. Paul McCartney said it was like the perfect song. And he made Pet Sounds required listening to his kids.
Sure.
So, we've had so we take very seriously who sings the leads in these songs. And fortunately, since I wrote so many songs, my cousin Brian is singing the leads on them. I'm the original lead singer, and we sing the songs in their original keys. So, and we have a drummer who's with us the last couple of years. He's amazing. I call him a show within a show. His name's John Bolton.
Sure.
He's out of the Northwest, and our friend John Stamos actually found him online, and we rehearsed with him. He sings powerfully, and he plays the drums amazingly. So really, we're really strong in that department. our musical director, his name is Brian Eichenberger. He sang before he joined us. He was with the Four Freshmen, obviously a more recent incarnation of Four Freshmen. He sang with them for 18 years, singing that high part on the Four Freshmen songs that inspired Brian and I so much, because we both loved the Four Freshmen and their 4-part complicated harmonies. So we're in great shape vocally and musically. We have a really great lead guitarist. We have a great keyboard player. We have sax and flute, done the sax solo on Kokomo, for instance, or California Dreamin'. We can do it all, and we get a lot of compliments about how close to the records our performances sound.
How many people currently, you just mentioned quite a few, how many people are on stage performing in one given show?
Normally 9 people.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get everyone lined up like that where they're all sounding great together, but I'm sure you guys do a great job. So you mentioned John Stamos and obviously like various TV things. You guys have been on TV, the documentary. Your songs have been used in like a million things, like in the Barbie movie recently, but a ton of them over the years. Do you have a favorite scene from a movie that used the Beach Boys?
I think 50 First Dates is pretty good. And Rush Hour, Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker was pretty amazing with California Girls. They played California Girls in 2 or 3 of their movies. So, but we've been in, like, as you say, a bunch of movies. Wouldn't it be nice? First showed up in Shampoo in the 60s with the, so we've had, Kokomo, of course, and Cocktail.
Sure.
That was nice having John Stamos and Tom Cruise in our video. I think that a lot of the girls like that, and a few of the guys too.
Yeah. So you guys, again, you performed kind of everywhere in the world, right? And you performed for hundreds of thousands of people. Do you have, when I ask, what's your most memorable performance ever? Is there one that sticks out to you?
One afternoon on July 4th in the mid-'80s, we did Philadelphia in the afternoon, and the Philadelphia Inquirer said there were 900,000 people in the streets of Philadelphia. And then that evening we did DC, and there were like 750,000.
Wow.
So yeah, there was over 1.5 million people in one day live that we performed at. But it was a free concert celebrating July 4th. That was my idea, to celebrate July 4th by doing a free concert in Washington, D.C. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. And the first time we did it was 1979. And this year, as a matter of fact, we're going to be on the Capitol Fourth, which is a television show. It's on PBS, and it's going to be streamed on PBS. And it'll be on the 4th of July. And our friends Locash, who was a country group, and they just had a #1 record called Hometown Home. They're going to be on that show too. So it's a variety show, a lot of different types of music. But the last time we did it, Jimmy Buffett came out and sang the second verse of Kokomo with us.
That's
barefoot,
incredible.
of course.
So you performed with like all kinds of different bands over the years, whether it's festivals or anywhere else. If you could bring one other band that you performed with on tour with you, which band would you pick?
Oh, that's a hard one because we've done so many. We love performing with Temptations. There's the Beatles and the Beach Boys who get a lot of, recognition and adulation from the 60s. But the Motown was amazing, with all those great artists and all those great songs. They're amazing, but we really enjoyed touring with the Temptations. We call it Surf and Soul.
That's amazing. So you've gotten to have obviously like an incredible life. I'm sure there's way too many moments to be able to think of, but if you could relive any one day of your life, which day would you relive?
I'd find that very hard to answer because there's the birth of my children, which is amazing. And I've been with the same woman now, Jacqueline, we just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary, but we've been together for like 37 years.
Wow.
And she's amazing. She's a former nurse. So meeting her was a highlight, that's for sure. And anyway, so I think it's really difficult to say what was a high point, except it makes me think of December of 1967. We were invited to go to Paris to do a UNICEF show, United Nations Children's Emergency Fund. And Marlon Brando and his Tahitian Bride and Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton were on it. The Russian Red Army Choir, the Turkish Ballet, a beautiful orchestra with lots of people from France and other places around the world performing. And when it came time for our few songs that we did on that show, the curtain opened and there was Maharishi in the front row and John Lennon on one side of him and George Harrison on the other. And I looked down and I said, wow, that's quite the front row. So we met Maharishi during the rehearsals, and we were then invited to come learn TM, Transcendental Meditation, from him. So that was a real high point. I've been meditating since December of 67, taught by Maharishi, and invited to go to India, which I did go. And when I got there, the Beatles were all there. That was really fascinating. George Harrison and I both had our birthdays in the spring of 68. He on February 25th, I on March 15th. So we're both Pisces. And when he passed away, I wrote a song called Pisces Brothers, which is a reminiscence of those times. And basically a tribute to George, who was a great guy, very spiritual. He loved his Maharishi meditation, but he also loved his Hare Krishna people. So, that was just a very special time in India. We got to sit and talk with Paul McCartney, and he came down to the breakfast table one morning playing Back in the USSR on his acoustic guitar. And that was all fascinating stuff.
Wow.
And meditating hours a day with, Dear Prudence was created there. Prudence Farrow, Mia Farrow's sister, was a subject of Dear Prudence, because Maharishi said, go and meditate as long as you're comfortable. And she would stay in her room for 2 or 3 days meditating. She was way into it. And she's a wonderful lady. And, it was also fascinating to be there at that point in time. So I'd have to say that's one of the greatest high points.
Well, and I imagine that has helped elongate your career, significantly, because it's taken care of your health so much. So with the show upcoming, people are going to go and listen to all the hits. If you had to rank your top 3 favorite albums for people to go listen to, what are your favorite 3 albums?
Well, I don't know. That's impossible to say, because we're touring, called it Endless Summer Gold. Endless Summer is an album that came out in 1974. It was a triple platinum album in the U.S. and sold 1 million copies in Great Britain under the name 20 Golden Grace. So, and then there was this a decade or two later, we had Sounds of Summer, which had 30 songs in one CD and sold several million as well. So those are 2 great compilation albums. But, you have to listen to the Pet Sounds tracks and the vocals, and they're perfect and amazing. So you'd have to say that's one of the greatest albums. But each album we've ever done has some gems on it, so it'd be impossible for me to say what's my favorite album or albums, other than the fact that obviously Pet Sounds was rated number 2 on the list of 500 top rock albums by Rolling Stone magazine. Number 1 was Sgt. Pepper's, and number 2 out of 500 was Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. So that's pretty good company. Of course,
I would say so.
I want to have a recount, of course.
Naturally. Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate you taking the time. This is really cool to meet you, and I'll see you when you come to Eau Claire.
Thank you. We'll see you there.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.